Welcome to Business Line's State of the Economy podcast, where you'll find insight, analysis, and the story behind the numbers.
Hi, welcome to another edition of the State of Economy podcast. And this is the second one touching upon the financial services space. And it's also a very special one because we crossed the first year milestone of account aggregators. Now, what does the whole thing really mean? How has the ecosystem of account aggregators simplified the process for people like you and me, and even for banks which lend out loans, which collect a lot of information from you and possibly know more about you than what you know about yourself as well? We have with us Mr. Tejinder Singh, who is the Chief Business Officer of CAMS FinServ, one of the key players in the account aggregator space. Thank you for joining in, sir. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Singh. It's been almost a year of account aggregators as an ecosystem in place. How has the reception to the concept been so far? We'll start with this and then let's get into the granularities of what is account aggregator and etc. So how has your experience been at CAMS FinServ?
Ever since the regulation came from Reserve Bank of India regarding account aggregator ecosystem, we have seen the traction that was being built on this space was at a certainly slow pace. But I would say from mid of last year, which is around June, July, really the traction started getting picked up with the number of FIPs going live and, regulations from other regulators, including SEBI and PFRDA and IRDA coming into force, and in a way mandating the ecosystem participant to be part of this ecosystem. So we have seen by virtue of those nudges from regulators and especially from offices in the government which are driving this initiative and focusing on it, we have seen clearly the intent getting converted into execution, and a space where people's perception was that things may move at a snail's pace. We were pleasantly surprised as to see really, the pace at which FIPs started getting integrated into it, and the FIU started building use cases and journeys. And it's a stage which is all set for an explosion in the next couple of years time frame. And we are very excited about the domain in that sense.
Great. You also threw in jargons like FIP, FIU, etc.
Okay.
Can you break it down for us and also help us understand who are the people involved in the entire ecosystem of account aggregator, and how does the process flow happens from a user end to the time that it comes to you and the time that information is shared with the banks?
Good question, actually. See, the way to visualize that would be you have to consider citizens' data is already available in some form and fashion in a digital format with the entities which is, the citizen is dealing with. He may be availing a service from a bank, or he may be availing a service from, let's say, a hospital or a telecom company or utility company. So the data of citizen exists in a digital format already. The citizen has a choice to take services in a free marketplace from any other service provider.
Okay.
But what is happening is these data are lying in silos. When a citizen goes to another service provider, let's say if for a typical case of a banking perspective, and let's say he's looking for a loan, a customer may be having a bank account with bank A, is getting maybe a good offer from bank B. The processes for currently of movement of data within silos are manual. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to go to a branch, get your bank statement, provide the statement along with the application form to the lender, and the lender will authenticate whether this want to do the lending about this or not. Today, you even have, let's say, even a digital solution like downloading the bank statement and uploading onto the bank statement to the in a digital journey. Again, all of it has certain amount of friction in it. And the way our citizen is not getting trained or getting attuned to the digital transaction world, the citizen is looking for a much faster way to do the transaction. So if the concept is money can move in from one bank to another bank, click of a button, which is what's happening in UPI, can this data also similarly move between entities? So when you have that as a thought, what has been created is set of entities who have the information, and they get named as financial information providers,
Mm,
which are keeping the data of customer at this point in time.
mm,
And then there are entities who are going to use that data of customer for
mm,
any of the digital journeys. So they get named as FIUs.
mm.
And it can so happen that FIP can be FIU as well. Like a bank
Yes.
can have the dual role of being FIP and FIU. AMC can have a dual role of FIP and FIU.
Mm,
In this ecosystem, the movement of data between silos, which was earlier happening through manual processes, is
mm,
now being envisaged through entities which are called as account aggregators.
mm,
Okay. Now, the name or acronym account aggregator could be considered as a misnomer.
mm, mm,
Aggregation is a word which creates some kind of dissonance in a customer's mind.
mm.
What account aggregator is basically consent managers.
Correct.
It is an entity which enables customer to provide his consent while he is a part of a digital journey with any institution,
Mm,
and where the financial institution requires customer to give his consent. This entity, which is AA, RBI registered license holder, NBFC A license holder, account aggregator, will create a solution for customer to give the consent. And while he's giving consent, the customer has the option, or a customer will be mandated to see what actual data he is sharing, whether he is sharing his profile details or summary of the account details or transaction details. So, and beyond the details that the customer might be sharing, there are other parameters which are required for
mm,
managing this consent. So, account aggregators plays the role of an entity which basically keeps a track of what was the consent given by citizen,
mm,
what was the use case for which he gave the consent,
mm,
and for which period the data is going to be taken from the FIP and given to the FIU, and for how long the FIU can keep the data. All of these are governed by something called consent artifact.
correct.
Consent manager, account aggregator, creates a consent artifact where customer will have a visibility on the consent he is creating. Once customer is agreeable to the details which are being shared by the FIU, customer gives a consent, and the data moves from the information provider to the information user, in this case digitally, and
Ah.
it's a machine readable data.
As a customer, as
Yeah.
a consent giver, is there anything in the process, or is there anything in the whole ecosystem whereby I can be very sure that my consent is not getting misused or used in a manner otherwise than I had authenticated it for?
It's a great question, actually. And the whole architecture has been designed in a way keeping the citizen at the center
Okay.
and ensuring a governance around the consent. So as I said, told you, the consent has dimensions of time, period, velocity, at what period the data will be fetched. I can fetch the statement, let's say monthly, weekly, daily. So all of those are the consent parameters, aspects. The question here is whether the entity which is consuming this data is adhering to the expectation a citizen has.
Yes.
So to take care of that, the approach has been handled through two ways. One, who can be FIU? An FIU can only be an entity which is a registered entity with any of the regulators in this country.
Mm.
So as a FIU, it's not that any XYZ person can come and create a digital journey, which means that he can take the customer consent and the data will come to him. It has to be an entity which is registered with a regulator. It could be a bank, could be an NBFC from RBI side, from capital market side, could be an AMC or a securities company or a RIA. From an IRDS perspective, it can be insurance company. And similarly, from PFRDA, it can be a POP or a CRA.
Okay.
And why it has been done? Because each of these regulators have very clearly laid out stringent guidelines about data usage and privacy. In case an entity goes beyond the brief of and manages and creates, an opportunity where the data is not being consumed in the form and fashion, these are auditable entities.
Okay.
Regulators audit them, and in case they are found in infringement of the guidelines, the entities actually risk their license.
How frequent is the audit? Is it every year or once in 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah, RBI, for that matter, all regulators have a very stringent policies of data regulation, and
Right.
so their adherence to that is through audit mechanism. Each of the regulators have their own principle. Somewhere you have 3 months, 6 months, annually. All these audits keep happening with the respective entities. So that's the first aspect. But beyond that, there is another approach which has been created in the account aggregator ecosystem, and this is certification-based approach.
Okay.
To build the confidence of the participant in the ecosystem, there are empaneled certifiers. The guidelines for the specification for all this ecosystem has been designed by an RBI entity called Rebit.
Yes.
So Rebit actually determines all the specifications for this ecosystem, and it also has a space for testing and certifying agencies to necessarily test and certify the FIUs and FIPs and the account aggregators. So basically all the ecosystem participants for adherence to the Rebit specifications. So these testing agencies, which will have their own test cases, they will run, their tests on the infrastructure of the entities in this ecosystem, and then certify whether they are in adherence or in breach to the regulation. So in a way, that helps build the confidence of all ecosystem participants that the chances of misuse of data are less. But as in any design of secure, safe system, you always run the risk of aberration in the behavior. There could be a chances where some of the participants in the ecosystem do not adhere to the guidelines. And as I told you, since it is a license-driven business, in such an incident, they actually risk the license itself. So that's a much more stringent control. Unlike the current processes available in the ecosystem, because this data of customer is virtually available in digital form as well through many other alternate channels.
Yes. Yes.
And all of those are having their own governance issues. Account aggregator system being backed by specific regulations and a well thought of design is probably far more superior architecture than any of the existing solutions.
Great. Yeah. Now, let me ask from a customer perspective. I can see my CIBIL score online or Equifax score online. Like that, there are various account aggregators at this point in time. Take the case of CAMS FinServ. If my consent has gone through CAMS FinServ, can I, as a user, look into your website and see who have all tapped into my information? Can I get a trail of that?
The consent gets raised, approved, and documented in a FIU journey, and account aggregator keeps a copy of that consent to ensure governance around it. And customer will be given information for each of the stage of execution of the consent. Whenever the consent is raised as a SMS or email, that will go to customer. Whenever he approves it, so SMS will go to him. And whenever the data gets delivered successfully, SMS will go to him. And subsequently, every time the data gets delivered, so the message, a nudge will go to customer saying the data has been delivered. Okay. And while all of that is happening, the journeys that account aggregator creates, like us in CAMS FinServ, we give an opportunity to the customer to revoke the consent. Let's say you have given a consent for a specific use case for lending to a bank, and along with that, the bank also took a mandate for, let's say, credit monitoring, to keep monitoring your account at a fixed frequency to ensure that whether you have the ability to pay the loan in subsequent months or not. And you get to see that, the consent is being used by the lender.
Mm.
The opportunity to revoke the consent resides with the customer. So
Fair enough.
at the end of the day, this architecture brings customer to the center of the ecosystem, with him having the power to not only see what the consent is for and
Mm.
who he is giving it to and how it is being consumed and whether he is okay with that or not.
Okay.
And
Okay.
for a customer who really want to be a discerning customer and be at the top of the things, this is architecture which really empowers the customer in all the journeys. And then comes a question of what we see is the evolution of the trust of the customer on the brands he is working for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. The other thing I want to understand from you, is it mandatory for banks to partner with all AAs? Can banks pick and choose what are the AAs they have to partner with?
And it's a great question. As of now, the ecosystem design does not support interoperability,
Oh,
which means that we have, as of today, 16 entities as an account aggregators. 10 of them are live. 6 of them are having in-principle approval. The operational account aggregators needs to tie up with FIPs and FIUs. So
yes.
each FIP has to tie up with each account aggregator.
Oh,
That's a current constraint. What is being discussed is interoperability, wherein one AA can tie up with one FIP, and subsequently other AAs do not have to really tie up with that respective FIP, can integrate amongst each other AAs and get the journey executed through that.
okay.
It is in a design stage. Whether we will see interoperability or we don't see it is for future to really reflect upon that. But at this point in time, among the entities which are live with an FIP, it's close to about 37, 38 FIPs. I would say at least 4 account aggregators are live with more than 27, 28 kind of FIPs.
Great.
So virtually a large set of FIPs are integrated with more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 account aggregators, giving a lot of
Great.
choice to the FIUs and customer to build their journeys.
Perfect. Perfect. Quickly, sir, can you take me through how do you guys make money? Who pays for this and how do they pay for this?
The paying entity over here is the FIU.
Okay.
Okay. What is being envisaged is that the FIU will be in a position to get the data digitally, bring down the cost of processing, and because of the benefit that this architecture gives, will have arbitrage available to the FIU to pass on certain expense, because there's a distinct expense in infra, in platform building that AAs have to incur. To address it even more, let's say take an example of a lending journey. Okay, in a lending journey, typically application processing fees in a manual world would be running into 400 to 500 rupees per file processed, while the same journey gets that executed digitally through an account aggregator can cost FIU 100 rupees, around that kind of number.
So you're not technically a cost center for them.
Actually, we can help them save their cost.
Okay.
And while we help them save their cost, we give an opportunity to the FIUs to actually bring down the ticket sizes of their lending. Because there's a processing fees, banks typically have a minimum loan size that they will want to do business for. Because it's not profitable for them to do let's say 10,000 rupees loan or 5,000 rupees loan. The sheer cost of sending an executive, getting the documentation in, processing it is humongous and eats away into your profit. While in a digital journey, since we have crunched it very, very finely, we have seen loans of a very small ticket size also being done and being done profitable.
Right.
To that extent, it's in the interest of FIUs to create these digital journeys. It's a win-win for all the participants, including FIUs, customer, and the bank and the account aggregator.
Right now, how many transactions do you process through AAs? Or rather, in the last 1 year, how much have gone through? And what is the hit rate? For instance, let's say there are 100 people that you reach out to, or the bank or the lending institution reaches out to for consent. How many end up converting?
So this has seen a typical evolution, as in, the nearest example would be UPI.
Yes.
It takes its time, the concept and the theory is right out there. Practically in execution, in terms of building platform and building adoption, it takes time. So we are seeing actually month on month good growth, 30-40%. Bases are so small that those percentages mean nothing.
That's
you
true.
see, the evolution really started, I would say it's now year and about 15-18 months.
That's
for
right.
this space. Last year, successfully account aggregate ecosystem delivered upward of 5 million consents, which means and it was growing at a rate of 20%, 20 to 25% at this point in time.
Okay.
With a monthly rate of about 7 to 8 lakh pulls successfully delivery a month.
Okay.
The way this system or this architecture is getting acceptance across ecosystem, because a whole lot of time gets invested into having your legal integrations done, having your technical integrations done, building your seamless journeys, and that time has been invested by the larger FIUs, the marquee names that Campinsa works with. And what we have realized is that having invested this time and built up those journeys, the ecosystem is right now ready for a takeoff. The plane has been on a runway, getting momentum, and it is ready to take off. And industry bodies which have been projecting the uptick on this ecosystem, like Samati, which is a SRO for account aggregate ecosystem, did a study, and their projection is in another 4 years from now, 2027, we will have close to about 500 crore pulls. And that's on a conservative side, because there is a distinct focus and a nudge from key participants in the ecosystem to really bring adoption into this space. Unlike, UPI, which got distinct benefits of at least 2 events, demonetization and COVID, which really helped, adoption. The opportunity here is that the ecosystem's benefit will actually enable the participants to create those customer beneficial solutions at a low cost, and something called sachet solutions, small size solutions, which helps them to do businesses profitably and be of more relevance to the customer at any point in time. So instead of sending, messages to customer and just asking them to buy a product without really knowing, this ecosystem will empower customer to give a consent to a party which he feels confidence with, a brand he trusts, and then the brand can really, basis the understanding, or suggest the right product and the right time. That is what is going to drive the adoption. And more than that, I would say there is a distinct focus of the government in the country to make this a huge success. Especially in this year of G20, the government really wants to showcase this global first initiative of account aggregator as a successful model. So we are up against a huge opportunity to ramp up the numbers, and the target we as industry have taken is maybe delivering close to about 10 crore successful pulls in the next 6 months. Okay. So
just the last point here then.
From 5 million to 10 crore, I don't know what percentage
that's a huge jump we're talking about.
And we feel confident.
It's not, in that case, it's not a flight on the runway. You're a rocket waiting to explode.
Yeah, so it is possible. The dream that we live in, the energy that we're putting in, the team that are focusing on it, and the infrastructure that we are creating, and the investment we are doing in not only building the platform, in building solutions around, journeys, getting new use cases, building, analytical solutions, So all of that is right there with that intent of making results happen, making that and happen at a much faster pace. And it's a matter of time that success will happen in this space. It's going to be differentiated by a set of people who will take stronger action. And in Camps Windsor, we take pride in the fact that we are in a position to address this opportunity much more strongly.
For people like me who's very scared of data theft, vulnerability of online information, what is the word of comfort and advice that you would want to share?
Absolutely. I think this is a great question. So the way for you to see this now is this is a ecosystem which is actually being designed to support you as a citizen as to where your data is going. When the consent manager, the name account aggregator is a misnomer, as I started the discussion with. There is no aggregation happening in this space with any of the ecosystem participants, neither FIP nor FIU nor the AA.
Right.
We are just, in fact, AA is a data blind pipe which transmits data from FIP, which already has the data, and to an FIU where you're looking for a solution. So only to that extent data movement is happening. But the fact remains, the empowerment that this solution gives to give the consent, to see the kind of consent, and to revoke the consent is a big behavioral change that will happen. The way citizens will manage their data.
Right.
So the philosophy that this data was of the institution and he could have misused or used it in a form and fashion that you never had a control is going to go for a change to the fact that the data is of a citizen and only to the extent citizen enables the usage can be done by FIU.
That's really comforting. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, sir.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you and taking us through what this entire new concept in India is. Hopefully, this should have a UPI-like moment very soon. That brings us down to the end of this podcast. We'll come back to you again very soon with an extremely and an equally interesting topic of conversation. Thank you all so much again.